You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. This episode is the question and answer session that followed my talk on 4 ways to quit the rat race. If you'd like to hear the talk itself, that's in the previous episode. And this one's the Q&A. Thank you so much for listening.
Cool. Well, we have time for questions, comments, any thoughts. Love to hear. Also, I would really like to hear which one of these different approaches resonates for you, if any, or you know, what your thoughts are about how you are interested in pursuing escape from the rat race. Go ahead.
My question is about taxes, and I'm sure this is a huge topic that you can put an entire topic, but like when you're dealing with these large sums of money, like you make 30 million off of a business sale, or you have a huge savings thing, like, you know, moving that around can incur taxes and expenses and stuff. So, like, do you have any basic suggestions to kind of minimize that?
Well, I mean, it's I think it's very different depending on which approach you're taking. You know, obviously, I took the entrepreneurial approach, and there's lots of ways of minimizing your taxes as an entrepreneur. So I'm not sure what really I can say that applies to all of these routes, except to say, obviously, don't do anything illegal, because there's just no point. It's not going to get you towards freedom as far as I'm concerned. And you don't need to, because if you get good advice, then there's lots of opportunities that you can find for reducing your taxes. I suppose in terms of large numbers, I mean, I mentioned the case of Derek Sivers. I mean, that's a really huge sale. It's a different ballpark entirely. But I guess the point I would make about that is, I mean, when the bigger numbers that you're talking about, the better advice you can get. I certainly took a lot of advice when I was selling my business about those kinds of things. So, you know, get some good advice, basically, is my approach. If there's anything that it's actually worth paying money for, it's advice about things like tax. Yeah, I mean, I really didn't want to pay for a lot of stuff when I was doing my business. Tried to be really frugal, but I didn't save money when it came to getting good advice about stuff like that. Yes.
I just want to point out that it's whether you're an employee or you're working as a business owner or whatever, it's all about adding value. And how do you add value? It's actually like a really hard question, especially in a competitive market where there's people that are coming up with all kinds of out-of-the-box, ingenious ways of adding value. So for me, I'm not like where you're at, but there's things that I'm passionate about, and I just find any way I can to just get involved with the community of it. And then as you get involved with the community, then you learn what is valued, what's missing, you know, what niches or what functions are not being taken care of. And then I think at some point your path can kind of lead you to where an opportunity is that matches your skill set. Because it's obviously a hard question. Like your example doesn't apply to everyone in here because that was very specialized. Yeah. You know, the blogging thing or creating a media source can apply to a lot more people, but then it goes back to that thing, it becomes about your personality, so it's not a business that you can sell. You know, like you can't create a blog and then have it generate revenue and then sell it to somebody else because all your fans want to listen to you. They don't necessarily want to listen to some other guy. You kind of see what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know. I mean, I just think it's like the first step is like, you know what your passions are, figure out what they are, and then just find ways to get involved in that community, like no matter how you do it, even if it makes money or not. Like that's part of why I'm here as a volunteer, is like just to get closer to the people that are talking about topics that I'm into, and it's a good way to do it.
I think that's a great point. I actually think that's an essential point. It's very easy for us also to get a bit distracted about, you know, how bad things are, and I think they're terrible, you know, how bad taxes are and how awful the government is and so forth. And these are all things that are way outside our control to a great degree. That question, how can I add value? That is such a huge and important question, and it requires so much work. I mean, it really does. If you're going to be an entrepreneur or anything, it's so difficult to get something going that people really want, that people are really enthusiastic about and willing to pay for. But I think that's the question that we have to focus, you know, a huge amount of our time and energy on, because that's actually the route to freedom. You know, creating value, creating more wealth in the world is what's going to free you financially to live the life that you want. And so if you can focus on that question every day, how can I add value? How can I create something that is going to make other people's lives better and that other people are going to be enthusiastic about? Then that's a really, really great use of your time, I think. And the process of learning that and of finding out, oh, actually this doesn't work and that doesn't work, but I'm learning something through it. It's also an extremely rewarding and fulfilling process, and it's how you learn. So I think it's a really awesome point and a great way to spend your time. Yes?
Jake, what resonated with me, I thought it was a great presentation, but this is the last thing that you talked about was your purpose. Really not, end goal, try to get what's meaningful for you. That has a lot to do with self-knowledge. Empathy has a lot to do with entrepreneurship. And what someone told me a long time ago was really, invest in yourself. There's a lot of young people here, present company excluded, and you need to know what you want and start investing in yourself, and then understand the trends in business. Like, it's so much easier to run a company now than it was before. With QuickBooks and the CRM things and the ability to go on guru.com and get someone to do a specialized thing for you, it's amazing. And what I think what's happening is it's giving a lot of power to the individual to actually run a real company that has a face on it. I mean, you can put a website that looks like a real company. And so, I don't know, I know that you said a little negative there, but I think there's a large positive about the ability for an individual to really run a company.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, I think there has never been a time that it has been easier to be an entrepreneur than now. This is the best time ever to be an entrepreneur, despite all of the things that we know are so terribly wrong and despite all of the difficulties. It's actually a much better time now to be an entrepreneur than it ever was before, because reaching a marketplace has never been easier. There are tools to help you get started that are so much more efficient and faster than before. And there are lots and lots of options that you can take. So yeah, I agree. I think it's, especially if you're creating a web-based business, it's a fantastic time to be an entrepreneur. Yes?
Jake, great presentation. Thank you. Great information, very inspiring, and because it was, you talked about your own experience, that really made it wonderful. 2 or 3 questions. Where are you in your 3-year indenture, and what plans do you have in the future? And lastly, where did you learn to speak English?
I'm out of my 3-year now. Yep, I've been retired for about 3 years now. So yeah, that's all done. And what were the other questions? I learned to speak English in England. I'm from England, yeah. And what was the other one?
Well, just plans now.
for the future.
Yeah. How are you viewing your future from today and forward? Do you have other business ideas? Are you just taking time with family? What's up for you?
So I've done lots of things just for fun in the last few years. I spoke a little bit about it in the talk. Hannah and I have been traveling around South America, and I played in a jazz band for a year and did lots of gigs and did some improv comedy and various things like that. The things that I'm looking to the future, I've just written a book about entrepreneurship, where I talk about some of these ideas specifically to do with the entrepreneurial side in more detail. So that's my focus at the moment. Is I'm really enjoying writing. I'm going to publish that book before the end of this year. So that's the big project at the moment. And also the Voluntary Life, my podcast, is something that I'm really enjoying doing, really like doing that, and I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And I have various ideas as to where to take that. I really enjoy doing the interviews and so forth too. But I'd like to write up some of the other ideas that I have coming from the Voluntary Life. And so the first step in doing that will be this book. Yes?
Is it possible for everyone in the world to get out of the rat race? And if so, what would that look like?
I think it is possible for everyone in the world to get out of the rat race. I think that's what we're evolving towards. That's ultimately what the power of the market will do if it's allowed to blossom in the way that it has. And we're in the middle of an amazing revolution that started just 200 years ago. And it sort of always blows my mind as to how boring history was. until 200 years ago, and then suddenly there's an amazing change in the world. Suddenly there's so much wealth generated and so much social change. I mean, quitting the rat race is a modern invention, and it comes from the power of markets to create value, to create wealth. And I think, ultimately what will happen as we evolve, and unless we blow it and everything just goes down the toilet, but if the market continues to evolve, if capitalism continues to evolve in the way that it is, it's getting more and more easy to be an independent entrepreneur, for everyone to effectively be an entrepreneur in their own way. And with that possibility comes the opportunity for everyone to provide value and choose to save and provide freedom, and to the extent that they want to. And some people may have different views about that as to how important it is for them to have a lot of leisure time, and other people may not need leisure time, may just choose to go on creating more businesses. But I believe it is something that there's no reason why it can't be possible for everyone. Obviously, that's not the world that we live in at the moment, and the marketplace is very fragmented and very controlled in many different ways. But for everyone who lives in the West, if you like, despite all the problems, I think it is an absolutely viable thing to consider. And I hope that these 4 routes are different ways that may fit different people's preferences as well, different lifestyle choices. So that's why I wanted to try and show not just the way that I did it, because my route may not be something that everyone would want to do or feel comfortable doing, but I hope that there's one of those routes that, or a combination of them that fits anyone. Yes?
Well, at first I want to respond to what Jason said there, is I think a world where everyone quits the rat race is what we're focusing on. Yeah. I mean, that's what a free society would look like, because I think corporations are a statist construct, and the top-down hierarchy is a reflection of society. And so if you had a free society, you wouldn't have people who are just naturally drawn to be controlled by a big structure. There would be more free-thinking and more entrepreneurs, really. And I think also I want to ask you about, you talked about you sold your company to a larger company outside.
Yes.
Did you ever think about succession and selling your company from within, to somebody you work with or who work for you, like a protege?
I thought about it, for sure. I think it's difficult. I think it's really difficult to do well. It's also difficult to step away under that model. I really wanted to, I was very, very passionate about my business, and I was really involved to the point where I decided that I wanted to sell it. And then I made quite a clear choice that, okay, this is not mine anymore. And it's a painful choice to make too. It was really painful seeing what was done with my business in order to get it to sort of conform to a big corporation. It was very difficult to do. But for me, I also appreciated having that very clear line, right? It's my business, and then it's somebody else's. And I was able to sort of go through that clear transition in my head. I think succession planning is a much sort of more slow, long-term process, potentially. And so I thought about it, but frankly, I thought it was going to be a much better route for me to try and do a trade sale.
Sure. Well, I asked the question because I'm 3 years into a succession plan.
Right.
10-year plan.
Right. Yeah, there you go. You see, it's a much longer process. Yeah. Well, maybe we can talk about that afterwards. I think we're wrapping up. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.